This week is a lot of fun, and I want you to enjoy this week. Be yourself this week. Don't be afraid to show yourself off. Be hot, be funny, be witty, and enjoy this week because this week has a lot more fun going on with it. And next week has so many things going on that I think it's going to be hard to enjoy. And I want you to enjoy this week because I think next week has just way too much going on. And I want you to enjoy this week because there's not that much going on here and I want you to enjoy it. And I think this is a good week to have some fun. So let's go ahead and get started talking about it. Welcome back to the Astrology Report. My name is Cam Wyatt. I'm a professional astrologer for over 8 years. I've done over 2,000 consultations and I'm so happy that you guys could be here with me this week for July 8th through July 14th of 2024. We have quite a few highlights actually going on this week. So let's go ahead and get started talking about it here on Monday. On Monday, we're going to be having the moon while it's in Leo, making a square to Mars and Uranus. We will also then be having Mercury while it's in Leo now, making a sextile to Jupiter, and Venus making a sextile to Uranus. I really, really like this. And one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about was, I believe it was last week, we started the week off with the moon conjoining Mars in Taurus. And man, was Monday last week just frustrating and slow. And it was just a lot of waiting and a lot of anticipating. And I don't know about you guys, but last Monday was in particular more frustrating than, I kind of expected. And that's so moon conjoining Mars while Mars is in detriment, right? Just kind of a frustrating day. And this Monday will be really similar. With the moon in Leo, again, there's kind of this arrogance to us. We're wanting to be seen. We're, kind of tapping more into our, part of ourselves that's a little bit more confident. But it is going to be squaring Mars. And so while we want to be seen, while we want things to go our way, that moon squaring Mars is just not going to allow that to happen the exact way that we want it to. The moon squaring Mars is wanting things to be done and delivered on time. And there's just going to be the slow movement to it that might, bruise your ego a little bit. And that's kind of added on to the moon squaring Uranus, where there's this kind of disruption where, have you ever been waiting around for an Amazon package and it said it was going to be there at 2:30 and then it's then it'll be 4:30 and then it's 6:30 and then it just says, oh, well, it'll be the next day. And then you just kind of sat around waiting for it the whole time. Monday's got a very similar vibe to last Monday with that. And so expect to be a little bit frustrated, but try to have more fun with it. Like the moon is in Leo, it's easy to have things roll off our, it's like water on a duck's back. Is that how you kind of say that saying? But I want you guys to just kind of have fun with it. Don't let it bruise your ego too much. But why I'm saying that too is with Mercury sextiling Jupiter as one of the highlights on Monday is this is very charming and witty. Mercury's in Leo. We're kind of just saying it as it is. We're kind of just speaking authentically and saying it with our chest. And as it sextiles Jupiter, it's kind of boosting that a little bit. You can kind of just say what you want to say and it's going to get out there. It's going to be kind of spread around a little bit. And I think Mercury sextiling Jupiter is just this kind of boost in confidence with our attitude, an ability to speak. And when we do speak, it is heard a lot more and a lot broader. The other part of this too is I think with Mercury and Leo, we are a little bit more fixated on, where's our pride? Where is our confidence at? Are we being authentic to what we're saying? And as it sextiles Jupiter, there's this kind of attitude of being able to look a little bit more deeper into what we are saying, why we're saying it, and not just being afraid to express it. Now, we also have Venus making a sextile to Uranus on Monday. And I really like this for trying something new, especially in the cosmetics department. Something you guys might notice if you picking apart my looks, but I am literally losing my hair and I plan on doing for the next 6 to 8 months, a whole new hair routine. I'm doing the derma rolling, or I should say derma stamp, and doing the rosemary oil stuff. And I'm really hoping to grow my hair because I'm losing it. And I think Venus sextiling Uranus is I'm going to make this concoction and everything like that. I don't think I'm actually going to start my hair growth until July 17th because we have this waxing moon. The moon's in between Venus and Jupiter. I don't really like Monday for starting something new, but I like the Venus-Uranus sextile as experimenting with something new, especially in the area of self-care, cosmetic stuff, bathing stuff, food stuff. And then the only thing we've got going on Tuesday is just the moon ingressing into Virgo. And with the moon being in Leo on Monday, there's kind of this, excitement, pride, we're feeling good. And then the moon goes into Virgo where we're just kind of focusing on the details. We're just focusing on the small things. And that's really it. So I do like Tuesday for getting things done, being able to focus on details, getting, a long laundry list of things done because there's no other aspects going on Tuesday. With the moon going into Virgo, I think it's going to be easy to shift into focus mode. But then we get into Wednesday. And on Wednesday, we will have the moon, while it's still in Virgo, making a square to Jupiter and then going opposite Saturn. Now, we also do have a highlight, which is the sun making a square, the sun making a trine to Saturn. But with the moon in Virgo making a square to Jupiter, going opposite Saturn, is feeling overwhelmed with everything. Like Jupiter in Gemini is like, I want to do this, I want to do that. I have all these ideas, I have all these plans, and the moon in Virgo needs to focus. And it's hard to do that when it's squaring Jupiter and Gemini because there's all these options. And I just feel like there's going to be this overwhelming feeling, feeling overstimulated, feeling like there's too much going on. And after the moon makes a square to Jupiter, it's going to go opposite Saturn, where it just feels like you might want to give up. Like, have you ever been in a situation where, again, like you have the energy, you have the drive, but there's so many things going on that like you don't know where to place your focus at, and you just like, again, want to give up and you want to stop. That moon opposite Saturn, I think, is going to be kind of a Debbie Downer on Wednesday. And my advice around that is just kind of like, hey, get done what you can get done. You can't get everything done off your list probably, and you don't need to feel defeated about it. You don't need to just like, because you can't do everything all at once does not mean that you need to completely stop doing everything. Do what you can and know when to stop when you feel overwhelmed, and take a break. Know when to, again, place a pause on something. Otherwise, you can kind of, make it worse, or you're not putting your best into it. So Wednesday is really interesting for that. But what I do like about Wednesday is the sun is making a trine to Saturn. And I really like the sun trining Saturn because Saturn is now retrograde. Saturn and Jupiter both station direct and retrograde when the sun makes a trine to them, at least zodiacally, meaning they're in, each other's element of sign. But when the sun makes a trine to Saturn, if the sun is like the planet of like your willpower and like your energy and your, authenticity, your just overall vibe, where again, it's also like the sun, wherever it's at, is kind of showing like where our energy is and where we're getting, again, like more of our willpower. And the sun's now in Cancer, where there is this kind of focus on protection, focusing on the necessities. But as it makes a trine to Saturn, Saturn's the planet of darkness. Saturn's the planet of like reality. Saturn's the planet of discipline. And they're making a trine to one another, where I've always looked at this as like the ability to connect yourself with like, hey, the sun's my attitude, right? It's how I'm acting here in this present moment. And Saturn's where I need to be more disciplined, where I need to be more grown up, where I need to be more authoritative, where I need to be more serious about things. And I just feel like that sun trining Saturn is being able to like step into that. Like I kind of wrote down a note here of like, it's like showing signs of growth. Like there is this, strength in your attitude and being able to handle the things that are coming up for you. So I do really like the sun trining Saturn, even though the moon is going to go opposite Saturn. And there is this kind of like, hey, you might need to take a break. There might be this big wall that you hit. Being able to like wear a positive attitude about it, or at least a more grown-up attitude about it, I think is available for you. And then we get to Thursday, and Thursday's where I think things get a lot more fun. The only thing on Thursday, though, is we have a lot of lunar transits. The moon, while it's in Virgo, is going to make a trine to Mars. It will then go enshrine Uranus immediately after. It goes opposite Neptune, and then it goes into Libra, and then sextiles Venus. And the two highlights that we have on Thursday is Venus is making a trine to Neptune, and then Venus ingresses into Leo. A lot of things going on Thursday. I think as the moon's in Virgo making a trine to Mars, it's like, hey, just do what you can. We don't need to get everything done off the list. Mars is in Taurus, slow and steady kind of wins the race here, and you don't really have a choice. So, like I said, I think I said this last week, but you're in traffic. You're only going to go as fast as you can. You're not going to be able to weave and bob out of traffic unless you've got a motorcycle and you've got a death sentence. But the moon in Virgo making a trine to Mars is like, hey, let's just focus a little bit here on this detail and just take little tiny chunks off. You know what I mean? Like we're not trying to accomplish the full task, but just do what you can. And I think as the moon makes that trine to Mars, it's easier to lean into that. But then as the moon makes a trine to Uranus, there's kind of a breakthrough with that. There's like oh, cool. Like that was actually a lot easier to do when I kind of just honed in and focused and only tried to accomplish a little bit. I ended up accomplishing a lot. Or like there's some sort of, again, just breakthrough in your process or your system. The moon then goes opposite Neptune. The moon going opposite Neptune is only like an hour or two. And my only thing with the moon going opposite Neptune is there's this kind of like, okay, well, what's next kind of a thing. But that goes away almost instantly because the moon will go into Libra and it'll make a sextile to Venus. But before we talk about that, Venus in between all of this will be at 29 Cancer and making a trine to Neptune. I really like this for like fantasy, nostalgia. Venus in Cancer trining Neptune and Pisces reminds me of like it's very romanticized, like housewife stuff, like 1950s housewife, oh, thank you, honey, for buying me a automatic washing machine for my clothes and stuff like that. Venus in Cancer trining Neptune, it also reminds me of like very Lana Del Rey kind of stuff. I've been actually, because of my own music journey, I've been like researching a little bit more into Lana Del Rey. She's got a really interesting story. But Venus trining Neptune just reminds me of like that, like nostalgia, that warmth, that, look how nice this is. And, being able to optimize that beauty through like the lens of media, through a different perception. Neptune obfuscates things. And I just think Cancers always remind me of like nostalgia. And I think Neptune adds on to that. Like, again, we could romanticize certain things that we didn't really experience, or we might have a better attitude about it because now that time has gone on. But then immediately after, Venus ingresses into Leo. And as Venus ingresses into Leo, the moon in Libra makes a sextile to it, where there's this charming, sexy attitude that really happens on Thursday. Like, not being afraid to be seen, not being afraid to be, yourself. And I think that's what a lot of Venus in Leo is about. What I really want you to think about with Venus in Leo, though, is I want you to think about this time last year. Last year, Venus made a retrograde in Leo. She spent months. She spent all of July and August and even into September in Leo. What's changed in the house that rules Leo for you? And especially given whatever houses Venus rules over. Like, have you changed to your parents? What reevaluation did you have to the area of your chart that Leo rules over? I think Venus coming back into here is coming back to that time with a completely different attitude and being able to see it in a lot better place. Like, what has changed over the course of 12 months for you? And I think as Venus just goes into Leo, Venus is fun, connection, indulgence. She's in Leo, where it's very like, look at me. I'm not one of the analogies I was thinking of was, I can't remember if I said this in one of my last weeklies or if I said this over on my Patreon, but it reminds me of like when you want to try on a new outfit and go on with a new outfit. And sometimes when you like want to look really good or sexy, you kind of go like, oh, I don't know, I might look dumb. People might make fun of me. And then there's other times you're like, no, I got this shit on. I've got this fit on. And like, I'm just going to flex on everybody. I like that for Venus and Leo. As the moon goes into Libra, and the moon is, again, our emotions, and it's going into Libra, the sign of relationships, the sign of Venus, and they make the sextile. There's like, when you are looking good, like looking good is the best thing that you, again, whether that's, just going to the gym and working out, making sure your appearance is up, having nice clothes. And I understand for a lot of people, that's kind of like, sensitive stuff or triggering stuff, but it's like the more that you can look good, and that also includes your personality too, the more attractive you are. And again, looking good is not just, again, like physical stuff. It's your attitude, it's your energy. And that moon in Libra sextiling Venus is like, you've got this, there's such a nice energy to Thursday of being able to be charming and witty and being like, look at you. Like, you kind of know everybody and you're just on a roll. So I really like Thursday for a boost in confidence, especially because Wednesday just feels a little bit low. And so then we get to Friday. Friday's okay. I think Friday adds a little bit more of an important note to what we experienced on Thursday. On Friday, the moon will still be in Libra. It's going to make a conjunction to the South Node in Libra, and it will then make a trine to Jupiter. And then we have a highlight on Friday, which is Venus going opposite Pluto. The moon conjoining the South Node in Libra is just, we're exhausted with relationships. We're exhausted with, what we're connecting to, with balance, with peace. Like I said before, I've talked a lot about these nodes in Libra and Aries as like peace was never an option. And, that's kind of true for the geopolitical situation that we've got going on right now. But think about that in your own personal life. The North Node's in Aries. Like, you want something. You're charging for something. You want to go after something. And you always can't be nice about it. And that doesn't mean, like, again, I say that more in a interpretive way more than a literal way. But that moon conjoining the South Node is kind of like, you might have to tip the scales a little bit. You might have to lean into something that, maybe you don't want to. I mean, I have the North Node in Libra, so I'm very, like, this is my nodal opposition. So it's very counterintuitive to me. But that South Node in Libra is like, don't be afraid to tip the scales. The moon conjoining the South Node is like, I think there's going to be some relationships that you're around that are tiring, or, especially if you have the South Node going through your first house, if you're a Libra rising, like, something changing with your body, with your image, you're just kind of exhausted with something. But then it makes a trine to Jupiter, which there is this kind of like hopeful attitude, hopeful ideas about what can change. But I think that gets triggered by the moon conjoining the South Node, where there's just something exhausting, something that we're moving on from. Like, the South Node's been in my 11th house for a while. And as time goes on, my progressed moon also just entered Scorpio in my 11th house. Like, there's a lot of people I've associated over 10, 12 years that I'm feeling more and more comfortable just kind of stepping away from. And it's not any animosity. It's not any bad thing. It's just, I'm ready to move on with my life. I'm ready for bigger things. And the cost of that is, maybe having to, I don't even want to say sever relationships. I'm not burning bridges. It's just kind of like, for all the Gen Zs and millennials out there, Drake and Josh, there's a very big episode of Drake and Josh where one day Josh was just done with Drake. And that's the attitude I really look at with the moon conjoining the South Node in Libra. It's just like, hey, dude, it's no beef. It's just I'm over this. But then Venus goes opposite Pluto on Friday. Venus opposite Pluto is, okay, you're wearing the fit. You got that shit on. You leave the house, you're feeling good. And then you step into a room of people. Maybe what you're wearing is a little controversial. Maybe what you're wearing is a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And you start getting people looking at you differently. Are you going to crumble in that? Or are you going to say, you know what? This is how I look. This is who I am. I'm not afraid to look this way. And, screw anyone that thinks differently. I like the way that I look. Venus is about fun and connection and pleasure. And she's in the sign of Leo. There's a lot of authenticity. There's a lot of glamour. There's a lot of big poofy stuff is what I always think with Leo. And you're going to deal with people criticizing that or, kind of looking down at you or sticking their nose up at you, whatever the saying is. And I don't want you to let the power of the crowd and let the power of other people's perception, or at least how you're interpreting their perception, to diminish you, because 9 times out of 10, people are just projecting their own insecurities onto you. They're upset at you because they see something in you that they want to see in themselves, but they don't allow themselves to actually go on. So it's easier to hate you. It's easier to justify their anger at you or their attitude towards you than to actually look at themselves and ask, why is that the issue? That's something you experience a lot as a YouTuber, by the way, when you put yourself out there in front of thousands of people. And you just got to go, you know what? That's you making a projection. And I'm not going to let that affect the way that I feel about myself. So then we get into Saturday. Love Saturday. I think Saturday with Venus and Leo, it's now opposite. It's now done with that opposition with Pluto. The moon, while it's in Libra, is sextiling Mercury, and then the moon makes a square to the sun. And I don't typically talk about the moon making a square to the sun, but this is that quarter moon phase. We're in that waxing phase. But I like the moon in Libra making the sextile to Mercury and Leo. Like, we're feeling hot. We're feeling good. We're being charming. Like, Saturday night is very, very charming. The moon squaring the sun, though, is kind of like trying to navigate sensitive areas, sensitive conversations. Like, for example, when the moon's in Libra, you're wanting to connect with people, but the sun is kind of like have you ever tried to meet someone with empathy, but they don't receive your empathy? Like, they kind of like get hostile towards it. I don't know why that would be the situation, but that just ends up happening. It's kind of like, not like you're trying to be nice to someone and you're trying to show empathy, but there's this resistance to it for whatever reason. That's the way I kind of look at Saturday. But the moon sextiling Mercury, I just think is like, okay, like, I'm just going to walk away from the situation and keep having fun and having flirtatious and fun conversations with everybody else. Things that are charming. And again, just there's a lot of fun on Saturday. And you should enjoy Saturday because Sunday is a vibe shift. Sunday, the moon is going to ingress into Scorpio, and then it's going to make a square to Pluto and square Venus. There is a big drop in your attitude on Sunday. The moon will go into its sign of fall. It does not do well in Scorpio. And there's a lot of not liking yourself or, letting others get the best of you. And here's the thing with the moon in Scorpio. Like, I don't like being like, oh, you should avoid that feeling. That's a bad feeling. Don't do that. Although, there's this, I've been trying to fix my algorithm on Instagram to give me more positive stuff rather than the brain rot memes that I typically see. And there's this girl who's like, she drives a Porsche. She's like 23 and she's like into sales. And she just started this one video off. She's like, being sad is for broke people. And it was just one of the funniest things that, like, it's been stuck in my head. And the reason I bring that up is you have to acknowledge how you feel. Right? When you feel a certain way, but you're resisting it, you don't want to dive into it. Well, that's not how, like, again, there's resistance there. We don't want resistance. We want flow, right? You have to acknowledge how you feel, but it's your job to get out of that feeling, to transmute that feeling. And I think with the moon going into Scorpio and squaring Pluto and squaring Venus is a critical point of, like, maybe over the course of those 2 days and you were feeling good, by Sunday, you kind of let, like, what people said did actually get to you a little bit. And you are a little bit mad and moody about it. And, like, feel that. Don't be afraid to feel that. But know that it's your choice. And you have to ask, why am I holding on to people's perceptions of me? Why am I letting other people's projections of who they think I am affect me. And you just have to go through that. Like the sign of Scorpio is all about transmutation. And I look at Sunday as like, it's going to start in a way that is uncomfortable. And it's a process of regurgitating those emotions, working through them, and getting out on the other side. And so I don't want Sunday to just be like, oh my God, this is a bad day. It's like, well, like for me, I wrote an email about this. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, you really should, because if you followed me on Twitter for a long time, I'm now switching. What I pretty much used to do with Twitter is now my email newsletter. If you're into cool astrology emails every now and then. But I talked about when I released my last song, which thank you guys for streaming it. If you streamed it, it's like one of my favorite ones that I've done so far. Stream it if you haven't yet. But I kind of talked about Cancer season, and it was like the moon in Pisces, and there's so much emotion, and I genuinely love feeling every emotion I can. Like we're only alive once, you know what I mean? And all of the bad emotions make the good emotions even better. And so why I like the moon going into Scorpio is like, it's gonna suck, but it's those shitty emotions that help you work through your shit so you can get to the other side. And so I want you to like acknowledge Sunday where like, again, you might feel uncomfortable and you might feel like shit. And it's not because you suck. It's not because you're not worth it. It's not because anything like that. It's because that is your, like, I don't even like to use the word karma, but that's an emotion for you to navigate. And again, I think it's just a lot of like, again, you want people's love, you want people's, you want to feel worthy, you want to feel desired, stuff like that. And I think you just have to go through the motions of feeling, and again, it may not even be anyone said to you. You might have felt like maybe everyone complimented you on how you looked or what you were doing. But inside you had some resistance. Inside you didn't feel authentic. Inside you felt insecure, and that didn't feel true to you. And so there's just something to process there on Sunday. Now, next week, listen to what we've got going on next week. And this is why I wanted you to enjoy this week, because next week we have Mars conjoining Uranus. This is a big one. This actually sets the stage for a lot of stuff. Mercury ingresses into shadow. So we're going to have a Mercury retrograde. I will have a video about that. So subscribe if you haven't already to make sure you see the Mercury retrograde video, because this whole August and this Mercury retrograde is honestly a big shit show. The 17th of July, though, I'm really looking at it as a fun day. I really like the 17th, so that's a good day. But then we have Mars ingressing into Gemini. So I'm glad that we have Mars out of Taurus, but Mars in Gemini has a few issues, but for the most part, I think we're moving into where we had a bunch of earth and water. Now it's going to be all fire and air. So I think there's a lot more fun when Mars goes in Gemini. We have Mercury squaring Uranus. That is a part of Mercury being in shadow, and that's a big reason why this Mercury retrograde is just going to be kind of a shit show, is Mercury is going to be squaring Uranus a bunch of times. Then we have our second full moon in Capricorn. We have 2 full moons in Capricorn. We get the second one. So we go back to what was going on 28 days ago. Then we have the sun trining Neptune. We have Venus making a sextile to Jupiter. That's sexy. That's fun. And then we have Mars trining Pluto, which is going to be more stuff that you kind of see in the digital tech space. A lot's going on next week, but I want you guys to enjoy this week. I think this week is quite simple. I think this week is really about like being yourself, being authentic, being charming, having fun, getting that little pump. And then next week is like when we got to start making moves and things are going to start happening that really set the groundwork for what the rest of July and August is going to look like for us. So with that being said, I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thank you guys so much for joining me this week, and I'll be seeing you next week.